we start to explore how good wizards could be in a fight without magic.
This is the Kitsune clan, a group of sword enthusiasts who like cosplay, reenactment, and historical martial arts. If you have similar interests, feel welcomed.
Here and there, the sword community has thought about how magic would change sword fighting. I'm not sure whether I'm deeply interested in that. I can just see that sword fighting and magic seem to be interconnected in a lot of stories. That is interesting to see for me because if I think back when I was a youngster and we played things like Hero Quest or the famous role playing game in Germany, Das Schwarze Auge, wizards would often not be allowed to carry proper weapons or they would not allowed to use certain weapons. And so they somehow had to work around that. In many new manga and animes, we have sword fighting mages, we have mage warriors, we have wizard warriors, however you want to call them. So we have definitely a lot of wizards, mages, spellcasters, however, magic using individuals that can pack a punch and that can fight. So, something that interests me in this aspect is how would different wizards, in the widest sense, sorcerers, spellcasters, whatever, use their equipment for fighting when they have no magic available. So when they are cut off their magic. And many of them have proper equipment. In the most simple cases, wizards often have magic wands. Yes, and that's a wide term, reaching from basically a chopstick to a full-fledged quarterstaff or giant club. And that means I can beat the hell out of somebody approaching me. In addition, many wizards also have different types of blade weapons. Interestingly, swords are not so common, or what you consider a sword. We have definitely also smaller swords and smaller blade weapons, but some of the magic wands available out there also somehow qualify as pretty nasty weapons. So what I would like to do is do a series of videos on different wizards, their equipment, and how this equipment could be used in close quarter fighting when the wizard would be cut off from using his or her magic. I'm not entirely sure whether there's a big interest in that. My way of thoughts here goes in a similar way as I have already put it forward. I think training with fantasy weapons gives you a thought advantage because then you are, if you come into a situation where you have to defend yourself, prepared differently because your way of thinking already accepts to use unusual objects for self-defense or defending somebody else. This here goes into the same direction, making thoughts of how I can use my available equipment, or better, the equipment of the wizard, in order to defend myself is the same way of thinking, and therefore it's a valuable thought experiment. You can of course disagree and say that this is all children's stuff and it's all playing around and that it's useless, but then you have to give me that if I enjoy it and I have fun with it, that it's still worth doing. You still have the possibility to decide not to do so and also not to watch this content. For those of you out there that are interested in this quirky way of thinking, I hope this could be something that entertains you as well. My plan is to start out with some wizards where I can get to the equipment, test it against some standards, so mostly against swords, against spears, against axes, or against knives, whatever I can get and think of. After having looked at several of these equipments, we can then start to compare them among each other and get an idea which wizard from which fantasy franchise seems to be best equipped for this type of fighting, because that's always the question, right? We take two non-existing entities from very different universes and somehow compare these. And usually the line of discussion goes into the problem what is possible in these different universes, but removing the magic argument here, putting it down to fighting equipment, should give a comparable frame where most people might agree. I can, of course, not entirely compile the capabilities of the different fantasy figures in how far they would be able to use the equipment for fighting, but we can definitely somehow judge the equipment. Interestingly, I have already started to gather a lot of material, or at least I tried, and it turned out that some of the cases are much more complicated than others. And especially what was often not met was my expectation concerning the material. I thought that a lot of stuff should be available in plastic and in rubber because the fan base of quite some wizards is of a rather young age. On the contrary, I often found very high priced items for collectors, often made out of very expensive material, including high carbon steel, for magic wands. No jokes. That definitely surprised me. Anyway, I managed to get already quite some material, and we can start this enterprise exploring the fighting capabilities of different wizards. I will call this series War of the Wizards. Why? It will not be a war because the wizards will be tested for their personal equipment. But WW, you can see it's a nice alliteration and therefore it sounds well, at least I hope so, and probably not all of the characters included here will be traditionally addressed to as wizards. Anyway, I'll do it because I want to. Is that a good reason? Yeah, maybe. I think so. For my sanity, definitely. For your sanity, I'm not sure, but we still will do it. I will, of course, use the opportunity to judge some of the tested equipment, whether it could be useful for training any specific aspect or for making a good training equipment for a specific aspect. We will definitely also cross-refer to different martial arts and martial art techniques that would be useful with certain equipments and in how far this could fit to the background of the character, at least to a certain degree. I hope you like my idea for this mini-series. So far, we have not done too many series, but I consider, for example, the Qatar series a total success because I like it. This one will be the next one to be liked. So hope you stay on board for this. Hope we could inspire you with these ideas and hope to see you around next time.